Today, we move towards poetry. We start with a poem, the very first poem, a photograph by Shirley Tolson. But before we move ahead, let me just brief you a little about poetry. So when it comes to poems, what are the things we are supposed to consider? What should you keep in mind? So to begin with, the first thing to consider is the rhyme scheme, the rhyming pattern. And that, as you know, we get with the rhyming words that come at the end of the line, at the end of every line. At times, you don't have the rhyming words. Then what? In that case, the poem is called a free verse. Yes, it's called a free verse because it does not have a particular rhyme scheme. Yeah, you need to keep this in mind. After that, the next what we have to consider are the literary devices or the poetic devices or the figures of speech. Yes, all the three mean the same, right? So till now, you maybe probably were aware of the figures of speech, but yes, we are talking about all three which mean the same. Figures of speech, literary devices, poetic devices, you have many different ones. Depending on the line which figure of speech has been used, we shall be giving you the definition of every figure of speech that has been used in the poem. So, nothing to worry about. And then, talking of the detailed explanation of every line of every paragraph. So, yes, you have a platter right in front of you. You shall be having slides where I shall be explaining to you the entire poem word by word, line by line. So, nothing to worry about. And of course, you have poetic words, you have certain difficult words, maybe you don't know the meaning of. Even that has been sorted. The meanings have also been provided. So, yes, once you go through this entire video, you are sorted with the poem. So, be it your meanings, be it your rhyme scheme, be it your literary devices, or be it the explanation, you have them all in every module that has a poem. Yes? So, stay relaxed and stay tuned, and let's move further to the poem. So, the very first poem that you have is A Photograph by Shirley Tolson. Now, before we move on, let's know a little about the poet. Shirley Tolson had a huge passion for writing and was greatly influenced by her father, who was a writer too. Pretty often it happens, the children are influenced. She secured a BA in literature from Brockenhurst College in London. Shortly, she took writing as a career, but also served as the editor for many magazines in the meantime. So while you're writing, you're editing too. She played the role of an editor as well in many of the magazines. So first what we are going to do is I'm going to read the entire poem. Now, while I'm reading the poem, see what you can understand out of it. I will leave you with two things to ponder upon. Yeah. First, you need to understand the rhyme scheme. Yeah. So you will be telling me that. Secondly, you will also be analyzing the poem line by line, word by word. See what you can figure out when I'm reading the poem. Yeah. And then we shall discuss it in detail to make sure that you have got it right. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera. A sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born. And the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. Some 20-30 years later, she'd laugh at the snapshot. See, Betty and Dolly, she'd say, look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past. Mine is her laughter. Both wry, with the labored ease of loss. Now she's been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived, and of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. It's silence silences. What did you get? So first, talking of the rhyme scheme. So did you get your rhyme scheme? Are there any rhyming words? So it's years, it's circumstance, it's all, it's silences. Anything rhyming? Anywhere? No, it's not. So when the poem does not have a rhyme scheme, it is called a free verse. Okay? It's called a free verse. Right? We got that. Now, moving to the explanation. What did you really get while I was reading? What do you think it is all about? Yes, now talking of the title, it's a photograph. It's about some photograph we are talking about. So if you have got some clue out of it, great. Otherwise, let's see it further. So, the theme, here you go. Now you check whether what you thought was right or not. Shirley Tolston's poem, A Photograph, is a tribute to her mother. The poem describes 3 stages in the passage of time. Now, there are 3 stages in the passage of time. Which are they? In the first stage, the photograph shows the poet's mother standing at the beach enjoying her holiday with her 2 girl cousins. She was around 12 years old at that time. Now, here we are talking about the poet's mother, right? When the poet's mother was 12 years old, when she was with her 2 girl cousins, they were standing at the beach. So this time, the photograph had been clicked. So this particular photograph is being spoken about. The second stage takes us 20 or 30 years later. So when the mother was 12, that picture was clicked. Now maybe she is around 30, so that's maybe 42 years. Yeah, around that much time. Now we are talking about there. The mother would laugh at the way she and her cousins were dressed up for the beach holiday. So when the mother would look at the picture, her own picture with her cousins, she would laugh and say how we were dressed for the beach. So funny it was. Now, in the third stage, now the first stage we know it actually happened when it happened. Second is when the mother is looking at her own self, at her own picture with her cousins. The third stage, the poet remembers the dead mother. Now the mother has passed away. Okay, so now the poet is looking at the picture. In the third stage, the poet remembers the dead mother with a heavy heart. The photograph revives a nostalgic feeling in the poet. Yeah, so when she looks at the picture, she is remembering all the things that had happened when her mom was alive. It gives her a nostalgic feeling. You feel nostalgic when you talk about some different things which had happened, it brings you those fond memories which had happened at that point of time. So, now here you will get to know, these are the definitions of all the figures of speech that have been used in this poem, or all the poetic devices. Don't get confused. So, the different literary devices, yeah, I'm here to confuse you. No, I'm sure you're not confused because you know the literary devices, poetic devices and figures of speech mean the same. So, let's begin. Allusion, a reference or an incidental mention of something either directly or by implication. So, you are talking about some person, some event or something, directly or indirectly. You're just talking about it. Alliteration, we know, is a repetition of the consonant sounds. It is a repetition of the initial letter, the very first letter, generally a consonant of several words marking the stressed syllable in a line of poem. So, in one line, you will get like, Betty butter butter. So, b, that way. That's alliteration. Oxymoron, two opposite ideas that are joined to create an effect. Now, oxymoron, you have two opposite ideas. You know, they are opposites, like there are two opposite ideas that are joined to create an effect. Then you have personification. A thing or abstraction is represented as a person. Now, here in short, if I tell you, or in simple language, a non-living thing is given a human quality. So basically what a human does, a non-living thing is shown, you know, to be doing. There we say it is personified, it is personification. Repetition, a repetition of words to secure emphasis. Right? Now here the word is being repeated, the same word is being repeated in the same line. That is where it comes to secure emphasis. You're emphasizing, so you're saying it twice. That's repetition. Transferred epithet, it is a description that refers to a character or event but is used to describe a different situation or character. So basically here if you go to see, you know, the adjectives have shifted, they have transferred. What they should, where they should actually be, they have been shifted to something else, right? Maybe some other character or a different situation. So this will be much more clearer when we actually use them in the poem. Yeah. So let's go ahead and just see what we have in store. Now let's first target lines 1 to 4. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling. Now paddling means what? Walking through shallow water in bare feet. You know, when we go to the beach, you want to walk, you just want to walk in the water, right? We don't go deep, it is very shallow. So that's paddling. Each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. So like I already told you, where you have words of which you don't know the meaning has been given here. So at a glance, you get the meaning of the difficult words. Now, if I talk of the explanation, so now lines 1 to 4, you got the meaning. Now, let's move to the explanation of the 4 lines. An old photograph of the poet's mother, which was pasted on cardboard, makes the poet recall the old memories of her mother's childhood. Her mother's childhood. The photograph is a depiction of her mother's enjoyable moments at a sea beach with her two cousins who were younger to her. It's very well, you know, said that she was eldest one and her two the cousins were younger to her. They were walking in shallow water with bare feet near the beach. Now this photograph is showing that how the mother enjoyed her childhood days with her cousins at a sea beach. That is one of the moments, yeah, and she was the eldest one among them, and they were all three were walking bare feet near the beach. The mother was standing in the middle and holding hands of her two cousins, who were standing on each side. So basically the mother was in the middle and the cousins were on both the sides. The poet's mother was 12 years old then. It shows that the photograph was very old, but the poet has kept it very carefully as it reminded her of the sweet memories of her mother's childhood. You know, we nowadays it's a different scenario. We can keep it in our mail, or you keep it in your, you have your folders to maintain in your laptop. You keep the pictures. But initially, when you had the hard copy, when you actually had a photograph, you would have to preserve it carefully. Yeah, you definitely want to, because those moments will never come back again. You don't even know, maybe some people don't even exist. You want to keep those memories. So the poet had done just that. This picture was on a cardboard and she had very carefully kept it, because whenever she would look at it, she would remember her mom, and this was her childhood days. This picture was clicked in her childhood days. So she would take it as a good memory. We keep them for memory, don't we? Right. The photograph also indicates how enjoyable her mother's childhood was. Her mother's childhood was very interesting, and she's just Through that picture, she understands that mom really lived a beautiful life. Yeah. Now, we got the explanation. Now, let's move towards the figures of speech of the first 4 lines. So, see, we are clearing everything. You're getting the meanings, you're getting the explanation, and you're getting the literary devices. Allusion. The cardboard shows me how it was. Now, here, allusion how? The cardboard. Now, it is actually talking about a picture. So, basically, it is an indirect reference, right? So, that is the reason it is allusion. As per the definition what we discussed earlier, yes, you are not talking about the picture directly, you are mentioning it but in an indirect manner. Alliteration, we said the repetition of the first letter, the consonant, my mother's. Then repetition, we said the repetition of words in the same line. So, each one holding one of my mother's hands. So, one. The words have been repeated in the same line, and so we have repetition. Yes? So, moving further to the next set of lines, 5 to 9. All 3 stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera. A sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born. And the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. What do you mean by transient? Temporary or lasting only for a short time. Yeah, it is very temporary. It just lasts for some time and then it disappears. So that comes to the meanings. Let's move on to the explanation of the lines. The photograph shows that all 3 girls, the poet's mother and her 2 cousins, stood still and smiled at the camera when their uncle clicked their photograph at the sea beach. They were all standing there, they had posed for it. As the weather was windy at that time, now it's generally windy whenever you are on a beach, their hair was flying over their smiling faces. You know, the hair was coming in the front. The expression on the faces of the poet's mother and her cousins was that of happiness and enjoyment. So, all 3 of them were really happy, right? They were smiling and they were having a great time. So, it showed on their expressions. It showed through their expression. The mother was looking very pretty at that time, and the photograph was taken a long time ago when the mother was 12 years old. Everything has changed since then. Right now, it's years later. Her mother grew up, now she was dead, and the poet was reviving her memories. She was recalling, recalling those memories that she had. The only thing that has remained unchanged is the sea, which was washing the feet of all the 3 girls. Now, for us, when we say, as the time goes by, every minute that is passing by, things change. It is inevitable. Inevitable as in it has to happen. Nothing can remain constant. Yeah? Now here, when we are talking about the people, the mother. Now obviously with every day she grew older, she grew up, still 20, 30 years later she was alive when she saw her own picture, and then she was dead. Right? Likewise, the cousins must have grown, must have married, everything must have changed for them too. But what remained constant? The sea. The sea was where it was, right? Of course, the waves keep coming and going, but then that's not a temporary thing, right? The sea is always there. So everything changed, right? The only thing that has remained unchanged is the sea, which was washing the feet of all 3 girls. The mention of the word transient indicates the ever-changing lives of human beings as well as the shortness of their stay in this world. Now it's temporary. Our stay, yours and mine, everyone's. Everyone is, here we are immortal. We are definitely going to die one fine day. This is what it's trying to say. In contrast to the eternality of nature, nature will remain the same. it will be day, it will be night, flowers will blossom, they will bloom, everything will remain, the sea, the ocean, everything will remain. People will come and people will go, but the rest remains eternal. The girl's life changed drastically during this period, but the sea has not changed. The sea is where it was. The stanza beautifully explains the transient nature of human beings. Transient nature as in the temporary. Here we are for a very short time. Yeah, that is why they tell you that, when you are here as a human being, make the best of every minute. You're never going to get this thing again, this opportunity again. So please be productive with every minute that passes by. Yeah, and just in case you don't know the stanza, the meaning of the word stanza, for those who don't know, it means paragraph. Yeah, so the paragraph beautifully explains the transient nature, the temporary nature of human beings. So beautifully explained. I mean, those 5 lines are giving you such an intense meaning. Now, moving to the literary devices that have been used in those 5 lines, most of them alliteration. It is T, through, there. Okay, so 3, through and there. It's like a tongue twister. Stood, still, smile. My mother's, so ma. Then you have terribly, transient, t. All of these are alliteration. If I talk of transferred epithet, washed their terribly transient feet. Now, terribly transient feet, the feet are not transient. They are not short-lived, but it's the life of the humans. So, basically, the adjective has been transferred from life to the feet, even terribly. So, in that case, it is a transferred epithet, right? Moving to the next set of lines. Some 20-30 years later, she'd laugh at the snapshot. See Betty and Dolly, she'd say, and look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past, the mother's past. Mine is her laughter. For me, her laughter is the past. Both wry with the labored ease of loss. Both wry as in it is twisted into an expression of disgust. Why? Because eventually it's all gone. Labored, done with great effort and difficulty. So here you got the meanings of the words. Now let's move to the explanation part. Even 20 to 30 years later, the mother would look at the photograph and laugh nostalgically, remembering the happy memories of her past. Now, when the mother was alive and when she looked at her own picture, which was like 20-30 years before it was taken, she would laugh at her own pictures and then she would remember all the old times that she had spent. Mother would look at the photograph and comment on the dresses worn by the cousins Dolly, Betty, and herself. She mentioned, right, that how funnily we were dressed. I mean, as per the sea beach, how we were dressed. Sea holiday was her mother's past, the poet's mother's past, and her mother's laughter has become a thing of the past for the poet as her mother was now dead. So we said, the sea holiday was the mother's past. So when the mother grew 20-30 years later and she saw, so for her the sea holiday was the past. She had been there. But for the poet, her mother's laughter, that time she would laugh it out. So that is the poet's, she's saying it's the past for her now because now her mom is no longer there. The poet still remembers how her mother would laugh at the photograph, remembering the sea holiday with a fondness as well as a sense of loss. Why? Because that time would never come back. What has gone, it's never going to come back. In the same way, poet feels nostalgic, thinking about her mother and her laughter, which has become a thing of the past. The words labored and ease are opposite to each other, but they describe the same entity. And what is that entity? The loss. For mother, it's the beach, right? That became nostalgic, that became like a past. And for the poet, it's the mother and her laughter. It's so beautifully explained. Yes, coming to your figures of speech. So, in the lines 10 to 15, it is alliteration, she, snapshot, see, so SSS. Alliteration again, she'd, say, so SS. Repetition, was her past, mine is her laughter, both right. So her, her. It is a repetition of the same word in the same line. That's repetition. Oxymoron, where you have opposites, hot and cold, day and night. So you have labored and ease. They are opposites. They talk of another, like they talk of something else, but they bring up a truth, but they have words which are used in opposite in nature. So labored and ease, right? That's your oxymoron. And moving to the last set of lines. Now she's been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived. And of this circumstance, that is the fact, condition connected with an event, there is nothing to say at all. It's silence, silences. Beautifully put, very beautifully put. Let's see what does it mean. The poet recalls that it is nearly 12 years since her mother died. The poet is consumed with grief, but is left with no words to express her loss and pain. You know, at times you go speechless. You are so much in grief, you are so much in pain that you have no words to express them. The poet is totally absorbed in memories of her dead mother. She's so absorbed that she just cannot speak. The painful silence of this situation leaves the poet speechless. The poet can feel the grief but is unable to express it through words. The silence caused by death makes the atmosphere gloomy where no one is able to utter words. Now, death is one such factor in life. It leaves everyone speechless. It leaves everyone in pain because it is an irreplaceable loss. A loss which you cannot replace ever. A person gone is gone. You cannot replace that person. Yeah? So that is why they say the silence caused by death makes the atmosphere gloomy. It makes it sad where no one is able to utter words. You just go silent. You definitely cannot say anything. It's a very painful situation where everyone eventually has to go through sooner or later. Something which is inevitable, something which we really cannot deny and we have to accept. Maybe if you cry it out or maybe, by mourning or grieving, whatever, but eventually you have to accept it. You stand no choice. That's the nature of law. That's the rule. That's one of the rules. And here you do have the two figures of speech, alliteration, silence, silence, and personification, it's silence, silences. Silences as in here we are talking about the death. Yeah, so here we are giving it, it's getting personified, and so we say it silences. It doesn't silence. It's a human who becomes silent. But here, that's how it has been expressed. Yeah. So we come to the end of the explanation of the entire poem. We've got the difficult words. We've got our the figures of speech for every line. We've got the explanation of every word and every line. And so let's conclude this wonderful, touching poem. And when you are looking at your mother, you are looking at the purest love you will ever know. It is so beautifully put up by Charlie Benetto when he says, that, when you look at your mother, you are looking at the purest love. You are looking at the unconditional love. You are looking at the most selfless person. Yes, and that's your mother. Please value them when they are in front of you. If they deserve a hug, just go hug them. If they deserve an I love you, just go say it to them. It is today. You never know if tomorrow comes. Just like we've got in this poem, you just have no idea. Later, it is just going to be pictures and memories, grief, pain, and tears. But when they are there right in front of you, please do the needful. Do not postpone it to later. You never know. Do not postpone it to tomorrow, because you never know if tomorrow comes. Yes? So with the same note, I conclude this wonderful session. Keep watching and keep learning.